Right, Dan Williams, we are back to talk about all things Instagram, TikTok, newsletter, the full Monty, if you like, of social media channels. Getting ready to dive in, and we've been very open, aren't we? We don't just sort of preach to others; we practice what we preach. So let's crack on. Before that, I've got a real question to ask you. We've noticed this week a few X accounts are being restricted. What's your thoughts on that?
It's completely random as well. You can't really predict it. So it just goes to show how important diversifying is. Having that LinkedIn, having that Instagram. Because if your whole source of leads gets banned overnight, you're finished. So it's definitely important.
Absolutely. And that's the reason I asked that question because I was hoping that was what you're going to say. And I think one of the things we've seen, isn't it, especially as we mentor other coaches now and other people, is actually so many of them from the start limit themselves to one account, don't they? So let's say that one account gets blocked, or like we've seen this week with someone that we work with. It's you are limiting yourself, aren't you? So um, and that's interesting, isn't it, Dan? Would you say most coaches and most freelancers limit themselves to one account, or do you think that's just something that I've picked up on?
I'd say most do. I think a big misconception is that if you're going on another account, you're doubling your workload, but that's not actually the case because the main workload is creating the idea, writing it, or recording it. But once you've obviously done that, you can post a video that you posted on Instagram and TikTok in 10 seconds, or you could post a tweet on LinkedIn in 30 seconds. So it's a massive reward for very little investment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Dan, let's crack on with the questions and let's answer them as we go. So, if you were going to say to a new coach they need to crack one before the others, or they should put most of their time into one, what would you tell them to look at and why?
I think you should definitely put most of your time in one. You should have one main focus and then other things around that. It fully depends what kind of coach you are. So if you're, say, a fitness coach, you're limited basically on X about the amount of things you can say. Whereas you can, on Instagram you can post transformations. It's much more visual. Um, for a productivity coach, we're talking like LinkedIn, Twitter. You can share a lot of information, a lot of value quickly. And you've got to also think about where your target audience is, because I'm not sure a lot of people on TikTok would care about productivity, for instance. So it's definitely how you can provide the most value, in what format.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think I really started getting interested in this maybe 18 months to 2 years ago. And at first, when I joined the coaching space, I literally just thought you put stuff out, pay for ads, people come to you. And I realized that's not quite the case. And actually, different styles of coaching or different packages are really well suited to different forms. Like I found that I could market a high ticket on LinkedIn, but maybe making a community for me didn't quite work on that. Do you find that as well, that each one sort of caters to a different, like a Gen Z or a different type of person?
Yeah, massively. If you're going to try and target young people like 20 to 30-year-olds, you're probably not going to find most of them on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm the exception there, but LinkedIn is for mainly older people, more professional people. I think this is pretty like common knowledge as well. I think you just need to use that knowledge and kind of make content intentionally rather than just post it because it's easy or because you can or because it's what you've already been doing. Definitely need to reevaluate and change your strategy.
That's a really good point. So Dan, what I thought we would do is, like I said, we don't just preach; we practice what we preach, don't we? So I call this concept mirroring. Where if I'm going to make a reel, and I can make 6 and 30 minutes, I won't just put it on one platform. I'll put it across, them all: TikTok, Instagram, X, etc., etc. I might schedule them at slightly different times, and different hashtags and this and whatever, but the same message goes out, and then it gets drawn in, isn't it, to like a funnel type of thing. But I thought what we do is actually we've been running almost a test, haven't we, in our new company, our new project, the Coach Track. and putting this all into practice, haven't we? And actually assessing it as we go. What's the most interest? What gets the most leads? What creates the greatest traction? Um, so I thought we'd maybe go through one at a time and talk about it and talk about our experiences. And then, obviously these new coaches and freelancers that are in the same space can hopefully pick up a few gems, especially some of the guys in our community. So I thought we'd kick off by talking about actually, maybe I'll tell them about the test that we did done. So over a month, same reels and the same content has been put out on every platform except YouTube, and it slightly different strategies for that. Still, content's being put out, but in terms of like LinkedIn, TikTok, and X, with the same content being put out, maybe at slightly different times, similar hashtags. In third place with LinkedIn. Does that surprise you, Dan? Is that interesting? Why do you think it was so much lower than the others? And how would that make you think about posting consistently on there?
It's interesting. I think videos on LinkedIn, they're really trying to push. Like they've got a new video feed, but a lot of people just aren't engaging with that. And the problem with that is most people, when they go on LinkedIn, they're not doing it for fun. They're kind of doing it for the networking and stuff like that. No one really scrolls LinkedIn for fun. And
Yeah,
that's the problem with that. You've got to think about the audience's intention when they go on the platform and kind of cater to that.
yeah, so that's a really good point. I mean, for me, I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. So if I don't have to waste any time, I try to put all my energies into what is most purposeful, which ultimately is attaining clients, for example, right? So I do know a few things about LinkedIn. I found out that only 3% of users post regularly, and your posts can only be seen by 50% of your followers organically, almost like it's cat, which is interesting. Um, the organic reach is considered to be three times higher than Facebook. I think it's interesting as well. You can have company pages on LinkedIn, not just like one page. You can have like almost like a double page. And if you have a company page, it's believed that your profile will have 77% more outreach. Have you heard of that before? Does that surprise you?
I think having a company page is useful. It kind of sets you up as a professional, which is what people are looking for on LinkedIn. But posting from the company page is not a good idea. I think that's something that we left in 2018, and people connect with faces and people, and that's why we're building personal brands. And I think you should make it as personal as possible, which you just can't do on a company page.
Absolutely. From my experience, a few things I found great about LinkedIn is networking. One, for the podcast, it's great. You meet other coaches. I found it really useful for pushing a high ticket program because you can be really specific with the ads who see it, but it's very expensive. It is very expensive to run ads on LinkedIn, but it was worth it, interestingly. Let's move on. In second place, posting the same style reels, the same sort of content was Instagram. Does that surprise you? Were you expecting Instagram to be more powerful, have a greater outreach, more traction than TikTok, or was this something that you were expecting?
It's difficult between them because I think the audience that use both are pretty similar. Maybe Instagram's slightly older, but the reach I would have expected Instagram to do more, to be honest.
Yeah,
Especially with because on Instagram, not all of the views are actual people; they can be bots, which is something you've got to factor in when you're trying to chase views. You're not actually chasing connections or sales. You're just chasing a vanity metric, which will be gone tomorrow. But yeah, it is interesting that TikTok did better.
yeah, really interesting. Again, like I said, when I was trying to really push Instagram, I was trying to work out how it worked. I wasn't getting any success at first, basically because of just posting pictures. Like we talked about this as the cliche, didn't we? The Canva mountain. And then if you do a little research and if you look at the analytics, which I know you're a big fan of, Dan, you realize that reels are double, are you will double to triple your engagement through reels compared to normal pictures. Um, does that surprise you?
I think that's just a testament to the kind of audience that is on there. Like for me, I'm quite young, and I would always scroll reels if I'm on Instagram. I wouldn't really go on the feed itself. Just and it's obviously the dopamine hit as well. You're going to get more dopamine from the reels. So whatever gets the most dopamine is going to win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, another lasting point, something we talked about on our last podcast last week, Dan, was actually like the use of chatbots. There is a lot of chatbots on Instagram, particular in the DMs when there's like many chat and things like that, you know. And I can almost tell when you're, you know, the moment you like someone or the moment they like you, you get a DM within seconds in your inbox, you know, and you can tell. Are you a fan of this, or do you think that that's where you lose authenticity, or does that allow you to crack more numbers?
I think if you're, let's say, under 10,000 followers and you're not getting that much traction to your page, you're not like a famous guy, you should ideally be DMing people organically and authentically, looking at their profile, kind of analyzing what's different about them, what stands out to you, and kind of adding value that you think you can add, rather than if you've got, say, 2 million followers, it would be impossible to DM all those people. And that's where bots do come in. They can be good for automation and stuff like that. If you literally do not have the time to DM, say, if you're getting 10, 20 people liking your posts in the day, you can use them. They're better than nothing. But ideally, you'll be as authentic as possible, as personal as possible. And at the end of the day, you're there for the connections. You're not there for the extra messages in your inbox, really. It's the connections that you make.
Yeah, it's dead on. Like, number one, in terms of like this regular posting, you know, the same content, different social media channel was TikTok. Does that surprise you? And also, it's really interesting to see what ones go viral or semi-viral. And a lot of that I've realized is about times. I tested it, you know, 8:30, 12:30, 4:30, 6:30, and 8:30. And it seems to be that 7:30 in the morning and 8:30 at night seems to be, you can almost guarantee that it's going to get a certain amount of views if you post at that time. And if you post one at 12:30 in the day, they can have one or two. Really, really interesting that. Does that tell you a lot about who's using it, what they're using it for? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely kind of young people in school, in work, in their first job, maybe just using it on the commute or on the train, um, like in the mornings and in the evenings. It doesn't really surprise me that going viral on TikTok is that easy. It has always been easy, but it's very hit or miss the audience you get.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's that's a problem with that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, you know, that we run the same ad, and this is obviously not ad, even though I'll come on to that next. We run the same reels over a month to work out what was the best, what was the most powerful, what sort of person sees it. And that wasn't just for us. That's so we can feed back to everyone else that we work with. Just to clarify, LinkedIn was just short of 5,000. Instagram was just over 5,000. And TikTok was 13,000. More than more than nearly triple the amount. Is that shocking to you? Some people would argue back. The sort of clients that we'd be after for me as a coach or you as a marketer or us as the coach trap, you're not going to find them on TikTok. What's your argument with that?
I think you'll find people anywhere. You just have to look hard enough. But the reason we're not going fully all in on TikTok, our main thing is X and LinkedIn.
Yeah,
The reason we're not going all in is because you're not going to find as high a concentration of people on there that we're looking for, these coaches.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, that's what I think.
A really good point as well. Something I've not actually told you about, Dan. I thought I'd keep it for this. Is we created an ad. And ads for me are hit and miss. Okay, I've had lots of practice, lots of experience with them. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. It's just a real mixed bag of results. Same video, same hashtags, same caption. YouTube, X, Instagram, TikTok, all of them, all of them. £10 budget each day. So what's that? Maybe 12 to just short of $15 a day, just as a test to see what one we were going to put maybe more into. What do you think was the most powerful? What do you think had the most views, the most opens the most conversions to the website? If you were going to pick one, what one do you reckon it was?
I would guess X purely because we have the best content there. We have the
Yeah,
best audience there. And obviously, with organic content, you're going to build trust. Even with the ads, they're going to click on your profile. That's the first thing they're going to do. So, was it X?
yeah, it was, and I think that's a really good point. Actually, I think when people go to ads, if a novice in this space is going to go in and they're going to put money into ads, I guarantee they go to Instagram. It's their first one, and with Instagram, you can be quite specific. You can see, a certain age, a certain type of person with a certain interest can see it. But the numbers weren't great. They weren't great. And if I remember, I might get this wrong, but with X, it was about 10,000 a day. And with Instagram, it was less than 2,000 a day. Obviously, being really specific on Instagram in terms of who sees it, like a demographic, an age, an interest, or whatever, that interests me a lot. Um, but the real question is, would you would you hedge all of your bets on one and put all your money for ads? If you had a budget for ads, would you put it all in one, or would you scatter it across?
With ads for me, I would always do it just purely on the main platform that you're on. Because say if you're on Instagram, you've got to think about it if you were the consumer. If you saw an ad from a random guy that you've never seen before, just chatting about something that you don't really know that much about, you just scroll right past it. It's so easy to just scroll. Whereas on X, if you've seen Greg before and you see him in a comment, you're commenting on someone else's post and you see him in the comments as an ad, you'll think, oh, I know that guy. I'll have a look at what he's got to say. I'll have a look at his website and they might turn into a client. So I would say definitely go for the main platform that you're posting on organically. For at the first, at least, definitely.
Absolutely. I can agree with that more. One interesting thing about the people that I can see running ads on Instagram, and obviously I see them every day or every other day, is that you can obviously look through what they're doing. And it amazes me that I would say 9 out of 10 of these coaches don't have, it's almost like they're posting from brand new profiles with, 0 to 3 followers or whatever, which fascinates me. Um, and the fact is, then when you do go to their website or do go, they're only limiting themselves to one um, channel, or they don't have a VSL, or they don't have this. And I'm just thinking, wow, you're just missing out so much spending this massive amount of expenditure on ads, and it's not quite as refined as it should be. I think a good way to finish this, Stan, would be if you're a new coach, fire round. If you're a new coach and you had to start off with one, what one would you pick and why? For not ads, just general putting your image, your message, your thoughts, your program out there.
For me, if I was coaching, I'd be coaching marketing. So I would definitely go for one of the writing platforms. Um, for me, I also like being concise, being to the point, which is X. So I would go for that one. And obviously, there's a lot of coaches, even listen to this podcast that will have found us on X. It's our main platform. That's why we do it, because it's what we enjoy and because there's a lot of people there. I think it fully depends, though, on what you're coaching. If you're coaching something visual, like a fitness program, go for Instagram. If you're really good at storytelling or if you're really good at videos, go on TikTok and go on YouTube. You can turn those YouTube videos into TikToks pretty easily, especially with AI. So you're kind of getting the most bang for your buck for your time, really. So definitely just go where your audience is and where you're good at making content.
Absolutely. If you're going to go for ads, would you put it across multiple channels or just one? Would you test it first, or would you put all of your eggs in one basket, if you like?
It's always worth a test for a tenner, just to see what's out there, even if it's just to talk about it or share a story about it. But for me, I would always go for the platform that you're focusing on the most. So for that, that's X for us.
Absolutely. I thought I'd just finish with one thing, which is really interesting. I think people undervalue newsletters. I know this isn't the social media channel per se, but for me, it's really interesting. I worked out, like I said, when I really started to get interested in this and I needed to make it work, the difference between a want and a need, how amazing newsletters were. Because before people buy, they want to see you between 7 or 8 times. And I could track that using lead pages, using the conversion, you know, bots and things like that. I could see exactly, where they were seeing this, how much they were seeing it, and what they were liking. Newsletter. I worked out that if they have, you can almost track from their open rate how interested they are. And that used to fascinate me. And I could work out that if anyone had above a 21.5% open rate, that they were really interested in buying. Have you heard of that before, Dan? Does that surprise you? Is that something that you would recommend to others? Is almost to use the social media channels to get them onto something like a newsletter?
Yeah, emails without a social media channel is wasted really because if you're spending money on ads to get people to sign up to your email, you're already losing. You're fighting an uphill battle. Because you've got to kind of build that trust first. Obviously, you're going to have less people on your email list than you have followers. But if you're already posting on X or LinkedIn or any writing platform, really, you'd be silly not to have an email because you can make an email in, say, half an hour. You can turn that into 10 tweets, 3 LinkedIn posts, and it's just really efficient. And it's also the only platform that people can't take away from you. You can't get banned from your own newsletter. So it's great to diversify, have a newsletter.
Is I think it's completely underrated, and I think actually like that should be obviously you want to push everyone to like fancy VSL and a landing page, but I feel like an email is underrated. And for me, that's been like a secret weapon over the years, where if I post a few times a week on there, that you can track exactly who sees it, how long they're looking at your message, and almost use that as a gauge to see how interested they are. Fascinating stuff. And again, I think that's so underrated. And the coaches that come in, or we're looking, aren't we, down the ones that come and go, if you like, these ones that don't last. And I think, wow, they don't have a newsletter. They're limiting themselves to one account. And actually, they've got to think a lot more bigger picture, haven't they? A lot bigger. I think a good way to finish this, Dan, would say, have you got any tips? Because I've definitely got one, the tick box formula, which we, encourage our coaches that we mentor to do. But any quick tips, anything that will give you an upper hand in this world, if you like.
For me, it's all about experimentation. Try platforms. Say even if you hate speaking, you're not good on video, you're not good at podcasts, just do it and see what happens. Worst case really is you get a couple of views on it, which it means less people see you being bad at a podcast. So you can't really go wrong, really. Um,
Absolutely,
all I'd say on
absolutely.
top of that is experimenting with content, staying consistent as well. It is a long game. You've got to be
Yeah.
consistent. You've got to be patient, and that's why I see a lot of people. I'd say 60-70% of people quit within the first month,
Wow.
and it's not even because they're bad coaches or bad at at marketing. Sometimes it's purely because they're not consistent and not patient enough.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, isn't it, Dan? I stress to everyone that we work with is don't let this consume you. Limit yourself, time yourself. I used to tick box formula, a real strict 20-20-20 routine, and I don't do any more. Basically, so I have longevity in the game. So I'm not here just for a month, I'm here for years. Um, and that's what I'd stress is if you find yourself doing more social media work than coaching, it needs to be you need to do something about that in particular. And I
Definitely.
reckon if you're going to ask coaches and people in our space what they spend more on, I'm guessing, I reckon 90% of them spend more time marketing than they do coaching. And that's an issue, isn't it? And that's part of the reason why we're here, Dan, isn't it? Is to change that statistic, to get people out there with clients more than worrying about, wasting not wasting their time. That's definitely the wrong word. By being consumed by social media, you know? So great stuff. Great,
I was
great place
talking
to
to a
start.
guy the other day actually he said I spend 5 hours a day posting content,
Oh my,
and he's a coach. It's absolutely outrageous, and he was trying to what's the word? Debate with me about how you should be spending 5 hours a day on content. But I asked
that's
him how many DMs he's sending, and he said none. So he was purely doing it because of the vanity metrics, and he was getting into a bit of a hole really because he wasn't getting any clients. He wasn't really impressing the clients that he did have because he was spending so much time on the content.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's definitely an easy trap to get into.
absolutely. Dan, I can give our listeners a real takeaway secret. This podcast will make me 20 reels, which is a month's worth of content or a
Yeah.
30-minute discussion. That there has got to be just habit stack, multitask, get efficient, don't let it consume you. That's the secret to longevity to me. And also don't look at your content too much. I like the people that we work with, Dan, don't know, I tell them look at it once, don't look at it again. If you're second guessing yourself, don't make it, check it, put it out. That's it. And I think that's a part of being authentic, isn't it? And the real secret is that. Dan, Yoda, pleasure speaking to you as always. I always think you give such a great insight, and I think that you see things differently. So from me, a personal thank you. Enjoying your cycling at the moment?
Do you know what? Today was so good. It was about 18 degrees. It was the first one this year without gloves. But I think tomorrow it's going back to 5 degrees, isn't it? So I
Ah,
just
terrible,
enjoyed it while I've got it.
terrible, terrible. All right then, Dan. Absolute pleasure. And we're going to meet again in 2 weeks' time.
Brilliant. It was a good one. Very